Quentin Tarantino is making a Star Trek movie, ? Word on subspace channels is that the filmmaker is in talks to direct a fourth Star Trek movie of the JJ Abrams Kelvin timeline, and Star Trek fans are either losing their shit, down for it, or some confused mix of both. Now, this is pretty bonkers, but we seem to be in a timeline where bonkers things happen on the regs, aka the Berenstain timeline, y'all. And although we don't know for sure how long Tarantino has been in talks to take over directing and producing duties, we do know that just a few months ago, right here on Nerdist News Talks Back, we discussed who we would want to direct a Star Trek film, and Tarantino came up as a weird but somewhat popular choice buzzing around on the internet at that time. But the idea of Tarantino dipping his hands into Trek didn't just appear out of nowhere. We flashed back to that moment when Tarantino himself mentioned on the Nerdist podcast with Chris Hardwick that he would like to direct a Trek movie. Does that mean he started the buzz himself? Slick move, QT. And so here we are. A Quentin Tarantino-directed Star Trek film is apparently in its early stages, with the cult veteran assembling a writer's room and batting around ideas. Now, we have to admit, it seems really hard to imagine Tarantino's blasty, in-your-face, kill sensibilities matching up with JJ's glossy, aspirational, likable action hero's takes on things. I don't know. I see the possibility there. But at the same time, while Tarantino has never made a franchise film before, he's definitely no stranger to playing in other movies' backyards. Nearly every one of his films pay homage to or heavily references a back catalog of classics. Some even play like under-the-radar remakes. The Hateful Eight is more or less The Thing re-envisioned as a Western. Django Unchained was a blaxploitation film transported to the pre-Civil War South, and Inglourious Basterds got a lot of its DNA from a 70s war film also called Inglourious Basterds. Plus, let's not forget that he's also done some TV work, helming stellar episodes of ER and CSI, and while both of those definitely featured a little of his signature flair, they also fit pretty snugly into the existing style and tones of their respective shows. Point being, Tarantino has a knack for mimicking the work of others. The question is, what will it look like when he takes on Abrams' iteration of Star Trek? First of all, Tarantino just happens to be a big fan of the JJ-verse. He called the 2009 Star Trek movie the best movie of that year, and Tarantino's Trek love doesn't begin and end with the more recent reboots. He made references to classic Trek in Kill Bill, dropping that old Klingon proverb quoted by Khan in Star Trek II, "Revenge is a dish best served cold," of which I also live my life by. And later, the bride describes Sophie Fatale as the pretty lady who's dressed like she's a villain on Star Trek. So how might classic Trek and the reboots factor into a Tarantino Trek? Well, on the Nerdist podcast, Tarantino said he would consider remaking older time travel episodes like City on the Edge of Forever from the original series, or possibly a take on the Next Generation episode Yesterday's Enterprise, which also involves time travel and alternate timelines. In fact, our very own Nerdist producer, Ben McShane, insists that the classic time travel episode City on the Edge of Forever is a prequel to Inglourious Basterds. Harebrained theory or visionary?
What if Inglourious Basterds is actually a parallel sequel to City on the Edge of Forever?
Oh my God!
Now, keep in mind, this isn't the first time Tarantino has pitched ideas for pre-existing properties. He's been doing it for years, most memorably for projects like Godzilla and Friday the 13th. But this is probably the first and farthest we've seen Tarantino stepping into a big screen franchise and doing his thing. But if this new wave of Tarantino Trek does happen, it could bring a much-needed injection of auteurship to the franchise, which, despite being one of the two most recognizable, profitable sci-fi franchises in the world, has struggled throughout the decades with varying creative visions, squabbling fans and creators, unwieldy canon, and a fractured fan base. And maybe Tarantino exploring a Star Trek story set in an alternate timeline could give Paramount a chance to reset the variant timeline of the JJ-verse and weave in the distinctly different look and feel of a new Trek like Discovery, and move Star Trek in the direction of reconciling new ideas while honoring the classic films and series. But what do you folks think? Would you want to see a Quentin Tarantino take on Star Trek? Yes. Should he just not do movies and make it a TV series instead? I don't know. If it was like HBO level, I'd be down for it. And what do you think about Ben McShane's Inglourious Basterds prequel theory? Let's discuss. And be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss one of our world-famous stories, theories, or breakdowns. If you're a YouTube viewer, mash that little bell and you'll get notified as soon as a new video pops. And Facebook viewers, give us a like, won't you? And thanks.